Rockaways Productions presents The Casey Waters Show, Episode 275, Deregulation, Nightmare Complex. Hello, I'm your host, Casey Waters. Today, I will continue with The Golden Road to the Future. Here, I look at how to set ourselves up for a better future with less disillusionment. Then it's on to deregulation, nightmare complex. Here, I look at several areas that are being deregulated, from environmental areas to our food, to medicine, to finances, and other things. This deregulation is widespread and is affecting our lives already. This program will feature background footage from Caldwell Fork Trail. Caldwell Fork Trail is located in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park in the Cataloochee section. To get there from Asheville, North Carolina, take I-40 West. Then take the US 276 exit for Maggie Valley. I think this is exit 19. But anyway, you take US 276 off of I-40. Then, just off the ramp, there'll be a road to the right. As you start down 276, it will be just past I-40. You take a right on Cove Creek Road. You follow that road up the mountain, eventually turns to a dirt road and goes over the ridge. Once you're over the ridge, you're in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. The dirt road descends into a valley. Eventually, the dirt road turns into a paved road. You follow the paved road, and the paved road will fork. You stay to the left. Maybe a quarter mile or something like that past the fork, you'll see Caldwell Fork Trail on the left. It's past the picnic grounds on the left. Well, it's a little tricky to spot. You'll see the bridge crossing the river. It's just a single log with a railing. So you have to walk across this split log, rather. So you're walking on the level side of the split log. But still, it's, I guess, under a foot wide. So it's a little treacherous, I guess. Especially if you're carrying the camera. But anyway, so we managed along. I went with my friend John this time. Anyway, so we hiked, and eventually the trail ended. It ended at a river crossing because there was no bridge here or way to cross the river. So the trail ended probably about a half a mile to 3/4 the way the mile in. But even though it was a relatively short hike, we still got a lot of good footage, as you'll see. So, now, let's continue with the Golden Road to the Future. The smartphones of the future are going to be able to do much, much more, and are probably going to be much more intertwined with our life. There's probably going to be good and bad consequences to this. So, I guess the good experiences, well, we'll see them and we'll experience them as they come up. So, We will instinctively perhaps know what apps to use and what apps to buy. And perhaps this will make life much better. But we have to also beware of the downside of things and how things could go awry and how to counteract it. So, what am I referring to? Well, smartphone technology captures your life experiences and provides a platform for how you experience life and how you remember things. This will become more obvious and more pervasive in the future. It just seems a little vague, but and almost a little harmless. But it isn't vague and it isn't harmless. This is a warning of sorts. This is probably something we're going to have to deal with. And if we don't have to deal with it, well, our children or our grandchildren might have to. And it might be very tough. Perhaps an impossible battle. But we need to do our best. So what I'm talking about is the smartphone will capture our life experiences, not just with picture and sound, right? But perhaps by tuning in to our mental state or our physical state. And perhaps as the years wear on and our memory fails, as we get older, our smartphones will help us remember what we experienced in the distant past and how we experienced it. So that might seem all fine and dandy, but the way the smartphone captures and deals with your experience and the way you deal with it and see it are two different things, of course. And even though they might seem very much the same, they still are not. And what happens is, in theory, we might become more and more dependent on these devices and become more and more accustomed to how they experience our life instead of how we experience our life. So we will be living our life more and more through our smartphone or similar device. And that will change how we experience life. And it might be a negative change. We might be too caught up into trends. And that might detract us from one-on-one interaction. And this might affect how we remember things. Because we will be remembering things more and more through our smartphone and Facebook and social media and whatnot, instead of remembering things in our mind. And so this might cause us to see things a little differently and remember our life a little different. And, of course, it will cause other people to see us differently. That's why it's always important to have one-on-one, face-to-face interaction as much as you can. If you can't do that, talk on the phone. Don't text. Texting is great to save for future references, but talking is always good for getting the subtle nuances of things. And that's what life's about. That real one-on-one interaction. And being an individual and doing things on your terms and doing things the way you want to do it. Instead of doing things the way, well, our friends might want us to do them. Or worse yet, how things are trending in social media. You don't want what's trending in social media to affect your behavior, just like you don't want your friends to determine your behavior. It is always best to determine your behavior on your own and then use your behavior to influence your friends and social media. Yeah, always have it begin with you and you be the one that's in control. Sure, you could get positive influence from your friends. Sure, that is all true, and even from social trends. But just be aware that they're not always the best thing. Sometimes they are, and sometimes they're not. You have to be able to make an independent decision on your own. And, well, frame things in the terms of values. Does it help everybody? Does it help poor people? Is what you're going to do, does it help increase understanding among people? And allow for more love, compassion, and empathy, and acceptance. If all this sounds right, you are probably heading in the right direction. However, if your activity, what you're trending towards, seems to be creating divisiveness and perhaps creating conflict, and especially if it's of a petty nature, or perhaps creating greed or other ephemeral values, such as judging someone by how they look. If any of these things apply, then you're probably heading in the wrong direction. So, always be ready to head in the right direction, because if you head in the wrong direction too long, eventually you're going to get disillusioned and you're going to be upset with how you behaved in the past. And that's going to create a negative perspective on your life, which might make things a little more of a bummer. So, to maintain that positive perspective on your past, well, you gotta keep behaving correctly. If you do things the right way for the right reason, with the right motivation, and having compassion and empathy and acceptance, and trying to work with people and cooperate so they obtain their goals and you obtain yours, well, then you won't be so darn disillusioned when you're older. And you'll be happier with your past, which will make you happier with your future. After all, this is the golden road to the future. Now, it is time for Deregulation Nightmare Complex. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's a nightmare complex. It's a complex nightmare. It's something, well, that you probably want to run away from. Something you would just rather not hear about. Oh well, that's too bad. You're gonna have to hear about it anyway. Well, unless you change the channel, or turn off the TV, or walk away, or do something else. Well, hold on, come back here. Look, this is important, for it really affects you, whether you want to hear about it or not. How deregulation affects your life is real, and it's something, well, it's something we need to do something about. And you'll see why. You just need to listen. Listen to what? Well, the liberal viewpoint. The liberal, idealistic viewpoint, perhaps prevalent in the late 60s psychedelic era. Gee, a lot of people say it's just too idealistic. It's just pipe dreams, unrealistic fantasy about some far-reach utopia that is unattainable. Therefore, it's useless to even think about anything that heads in that direction. After all, they were all just a bunch of potheads and people perhaps doing psychedelic drugs. But of course, psychedelic drugs do inspire some people to do great things. So it might not be as bad as you think. Sure. So, well, the thing is, the liberal viewpoint is often framed in an over-idealistic way and often laughed at and ridiculed. Well, I say ridicule the ridiculers, because the liberal viewpoint is right. The liberal viewpoint is as ancient as the conservative viewpoint. This is a battle that's been going on a long time. So, anyway, I just happen to be on the liberal side. I just happen to believe in the common man and striving to make life better for the common man and the common lady and their family. Sure. So, sometimes you have to listen to the liberal viewpoint. Sometimes it might seem like socialism or even communism. For those aren't all horrible words either. Sometimes we need a little more regulation to get us out of the deregulation nightmare complex that we are facing, that we are suffering under, that's probably only going to get worse as apathy sets in, as the liberal viewpoint is ridiculed further and suppressed more in the media, as the media conglomerate contains fewer and fewer outlets, and those fewer and fewer outlets become more conservative. Well, you might not hear people like me. Well, except maybe Rachel Maddow and other people like her. But still, everybody changes. Even Rachel Maddow changes. Sure, everyone's viewpoint changes. So you just got to remember, stick to the liberal viewpoint. Anyway, we don't need warmongering. No. We need peace. Sounds a little too idealistic? Well, that's too bad. It's what we need anyway. So, just deal with it. Oh well. So, we're not even there yet, and I got you all upset, perhaps. Well, come back. We have to deal with it. We have to deal with the deregulation nightmare complex. And there's many angles to it. So let's dive in. Here we go. Whoops, we got Citizens United. Well, where corporations are people, and where contribution limits are lifted, and corporate donors become anonymous. So we don't know who's donating to whose campaign. Often the candidate with the most money wins. And often that money, well, is from large corporate donors who are often anonymous. So we don't know where the money's coming from, and therefore we don't know how the candidate might be influenced, or what possible promises he had made to what industry, or what industry is supporting him or her. All this is, well, we're kind of kept in the dark. Not always, but often enough. And because of Citizens United, the voice of the common man, of the common lady, the common person working so hard. Their voice is suppressed. Often they feel it's not even worth the effort to vote, but it is. So we should vote. Sure, we need to have our voices heard. And Citizens United doesn't help that. It only suppresses our voices. Same with gerrymandering of election districts, where election districts are redrawn, where election districts are changed geographically to support a more Republican candidate to increase the chances of a Republican winning and decrease the chances of a Democrat winning. Even though, when you look at the popular vote of all the gerrymandered districts in the region, the popular vote might be Democrat, but in fact, more Republicans might win because of the way the districts are cut up to reduce the effectiveness of the Democratic vote. This is happening probably in several areas of the country, including here in North Carolina, where I live. Oh well. So that's only one problem. Then there's trade deregulation. We don't hear about that one either. But a lot of times it allows international corporations, in the name of making a profit, to override local environmental laws and allows local citizens to suffer where operations are run to support an industry. This is happening in many locations throughout the world, in many industries. People are suffering from pollution, from water contamination, and from other things. This needs to stop, but it isn't. With the Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Agreement going through, well, I guess it will go through, well, things aren't looking too good. There might be even more trade agreements to follow with further deregulation. The deregulation nightmare isn't it isn't going to end anytime soon. So we just have to deal with it, and it goes on, and it's bigger than I even gonna talk about. I don't have time to talk about it all. Besides, I don't know about it all. There's probably far more to it than I realize. You just need to investigate yourself, if you even have time. If you don't have time, try to seek out someone who does. Perhaps a liberal retired person. There might be few and far between, but maybe more than you realize. Well, just a matter of finding someone who has time to do the research, to find out all the complexities and how far-reaching the deregulation nightmare complex really is. For it goes beyond trade deregulation and Citizens United. You like chicken perhaps for dinner? Well, maybe not tonight. That chicken might be in front of you right now and you're about to eat it. But did you realize it might be nastier than before? Does it taste nastier? Use your taste buds as your judge, for it really might be nastier because of the nasty chicken rule. Sure, now chickens can be processed even faster. Maybe it's like one chicken every third of a second instead of one chicken every 2/3 of a second. Something like that. Somehow faster. Faster is better. Faster means more profits for the chicken corporations. So what if there's a little more fecal material on the chicken? Just wash it off with bleach. I think that's what the regulations say that they could do now. It makes chicken more dangerous in the name of profit for chicken companies, large chicken conglomerates that house chickens in overcrowded conditions that you don't even want to think about. I remember my niece. She's vegan. She told me how she became vegan. She said she watched a movie, probably a movie about overcrowded chicken conditions and nightmare beef conditions and other food production nightmares. Well, you don't want to think about it, especially if it's dinner time. But anyway, so that's just another aspect of the deregulation nightmare complex. But are you ready to move on? Well, maybe not. But that's too bad. We're going to move on anyway. Try to stay with me if you can. Because there's agricultural and factory farm runoff to deal with. Well, so much it's causing real problems in our waterways and our water supplies. Is causing problems where municipal water supplies have to be shut down because of well, too much algae in the water, which comes from too much agricultural fertilizer. Well, that's the whole way the whole system is set to run. Run on fertilizer instead of on organic material. Have more soil loss instead of soil conservation. Less diversity of crops. Sure, all in the favor of higher corporate profits, but at what cost to us? Well, in addition to threatening our water supplies and perhaps recreational fishing and other recreational water uses, well, there's factory farm runoff. Well, that creates the same problems. Water pollution. It's a lot to deal with, and there's probably more to it than I'm describing.
Casey Waters Show. Producer Casey Waters. Graphic editing Judson Laird. Please note our new email address, caseywaters2 at caseywaters.com.